All right, Ambush, and today we are joined by a contemporary folk artist who took 3 years, I believe, to go ahead and study how Canadians experience, express, and even repress their anger. And she went ahead and matched those topics with some very soothing sounds. When she crafted it together, she entitled it Calm a Fury. It is an 11-track ride, and of course, we're diving behind it today with my guest, the lovely Sarah Hiltz. How's it going today, Sarah?
Pretty great so far. Looks like we're going to have some rain in a few minutes in Toronto, and I love rain, so that's good for me.
Okay, so it's a good thing then. Okay, rainy day vibes can be a good thing, right?
Right.
Plants need it to grow. It is essential.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Hey, perfect. Well, I'm glad that you got a rainy day to enjoy your afternoon then.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Awesome. And of course, we are here, like I mentioned, to discuss this new album, Calm a Fury. And right off the bat, I need to know what inspired this topic.
Well, I went through this personality typology system called the Enneagram and took a test that suggested I was a type 1 that is kind of known for their anger. And I didn't know that about myself. So I thought, well, this must be a wrong result. I'm not an angry person. And my partner at the time just looked at me, kind of tilted his head and was like, Sarah. I'm like, what? No way. What?
How dare you?
So I started to kind of give it some more thought, and the research project of looking at how we experience, express, and repress anger. That last one, the repress part, that's my specialty. So I repressed it so well that I wasn't even aware of how much anger I was holding. So that once I realized that and started to kind of unpack what that means, how that impacts my life, I realized I need to learn about this. I learn about anger for my own sake, about how to process it, move through it, kind of just get beyond moments of anger and not just hold them inside. Yeah, I wrote one song about it that sort of scratched the surface, and it just felt like there was more to it. So I just did a deep dive, and on it went, and then here I am. That started. I wrote the research proposal in the summer of 2018. So I didn't start the research right away after that, but it's been almost a 4-year journey now since the beginning of this process.
Wow. So this was specifically to write an album then?
Yes. Yeah. That was my plan. Yeah. Yeah. I thought one song isn't enough. I'm not really able to express what I need to express or learn what I need to learn through the course of just writing one song. So I thought, and I've talked to a few people who don't experience anger the same way, right? I have one friend who has no problem being angry and she doesn't ever feel guilty about it. And that's so different from my experience. And I just kind of went through life assuming we all deal with it the same way. That's so naive.
Right?
Right. Yeah. So I thought it would be so interesting.
I'm a guilt person too, right?
You are. Right. Okay. Yeah. We're on the same page at least.
It's like, I don't like being angry. It makes me feel weird. Like, I don't know. It's like,
right.
I just don't feel like it's the best way to express myself. But then it's the same time. We should be able to feel our full range of emotions. And I'm sorry for cutting you off there.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I completely agree. Right. It's an important part of the human experience. And it's important to letting us know when a boundary's been crossed for ourselves or when something maybe requires action of us. Anger can be an indicator of that. So, yeah. So I've learned a lot, and I still feel like I have so much to learn. I'm not very good at expressing anger without alienating people. I don't know. Maybe, I think it must be possible, but it's very uncomfortable to be on the receiving end of somebody's anger too. I think no matter how they are expressing it. I don't know.
Hmm. Well, it's all up to the individual and how they take it as well, right? Because sometimes you can take anger as constructive criticism, or it
Mm.
depends on the situation. There's so many factors that go into it, which is what I like that you say that one song wasn't enough, because once you probably started to dive into it, like you mentioned, you noticed that some people are easy with experiencing anger, some people
Hmm.
repress it. There's so many different ways that people deal with it. Some of it healthy, a lot of it not very healthy for ourselves, like even from a repressing standpoint, right?
Right, right. Yeah, that leads to lots of unhealthy things. It was making me depressed, or I just sometimes end up carrying it in my body. I'll get really tense shoulders. So then I'm physically experiencing pain because I just don't want to deal with my emotions. And you know what? I don't have time for that. Life's too short.
It's so very true. Life is too short. Might as well just express yourself and be you, right?
Right.
Which you did do through a few of these tracks, but also, of course, you did capture quite a few different experiences
Hmm.
through a lot of these songs. So when it came to taking someone else's anger or experiences, say even like the first track on the album from like the perspective of one Sinead O'Connor, it's how was it sort of to take other people's anger and sort of put that into a perspective?
I think I generally will filter everything through my own lens because I don't really want to speak for other people too directly. So the first song, the first verse there is written in the second person. So I speak about Sinead O'Connor and a particular experience that she went through. And the reason that I chose to write about that was because of how strongly I resonated with what I had seen in a video of her, which I can tell that story if you like, but it kind of felt emblematic of what a lot of women go through in experiencing anger, not just me, not just Sinead O'Connor. And so that felt important to write that song kind of about something that feels pretty universal for women anyways. Maybe not all women, but a lot of them, and a lot of the people that I spoke to throughout the course of the research project. So yeah, just
I would love to dive into a couple of the tracks here. And I mean, Wretching was sort of a double single right before, released a month before the album came out, a double single with Calm Fury. And I feel like these songs sort of balance off of each other, because you mentioned how the first one's sort of about women's anger and otherwise, and reading into Calm Fury is sort of just how like very an interesting perspective as well. If you want to dive further into these songs, please go right ahead.
Right. Okay, so Retching in the Wings was actually the first song that I wrote after I started the research. And I knew I had a note in, I had written in my notes, I want to write about this video I saw of Sinead O'Connor at some point. And I did a songwriting residency. I was going through, okay, these are the topics I kind of want to cover. So that was just the first one I picked to try and work on. And I wrote it about watching Sinead O'Connor at Madison Square Gardens, where she was supposed to perform for a Bob Dylan tribute concert. But that was just a few weeks after she had torn up a photograph of the Pope on live television. And people were really upset about that. It's 1992. So back, speaking back to the Catholic Church was a bigger deal back then.
Much bigger.
Right. Things have changed. So when she walked out on stage, the audience at Madison Square Garden started booing. And they booed so loudly that she couldn't actually perform the song she was supposed to do. And so instead, she recited Bob Marley song a cappella and just had the fiercest look in her eyes on stage and looked so strong and defiant in the face of so much vitriol being sent at her by thousands of people. And then she just kind of like lifts her chin and walks off stage at the end. But then you kind of see her collapse into someone's arms off stage. Like once she's not in front of everybody that she just faced off with, her body just kind of is collapsing under all of that energy that's expelled in that moment. And so when I watched that, I thought, that is how I feel. It's so difficult to bring forth the anger for me, and it costs so much, to have to put up with people's reaction to it. So that's what that song is about. And there's a line in the chorus that says, it's the cost of living when you are a woman who has something to say. And so that's that song, and the first song that I wrote. And so I started performing it kind of right off the bat in 2019. And then it was in my live set for almost a year before COVID happened and I had no more live sets. And so I had the opportunity to kind of see how this song was landing for people. And so many times the energy in the room would just shift and become tense when I would tell the story about watching this video of Sinead O'Connor. And particularly men felt pretty uncomfortable with me talking about a woman being angry. and I kind of tend to get kind of feisty when I talk about that story because it makes me mad. She was protesting against child abuse that's perpetrated and covered up by the church. And there's pretty much nothing that makes me angrier than people who hold power over others who have less like agency and faculty and abusing that power. Like I think that's the thing that makes me the angriest in the world.
Oh, I can agree.
Yeah. So that's what I get a little bit animated. And I hope that this is another thing that is changing, but it's still, I think it's uncomfortable, like I said, to be on the receiving end of anger. And a lot of men are still uncomfortable with a woman expressing anger. So that's what the song Calm Fury is about. It's actually about the observation that I've made of watching people react to Wretching in the Wings. That's sort of the direct inspiration, but it's more broadly inspired by the concept of saying, like, listen, you're going to be okay if I'm having a feeling. Like, you're going to be all right if I'm upset, and I'm talking about it. So that's what it's about.
Well, it makes me laugh, right? Because you're telling this story about something that happened like in 1992, which as of our recording, 30 years ago, right? So right. For people inside the room to get uncomfortable about you telling a story about like something that lasted maybe 5 minutes.
Right.
30 years ago is like, why are you like, what's the issue here? Like, why? Mm-hmm. What? I don't understand why. Huh? Okay, yeah. Like, sure, all right. I mean, I'm glad that you're, like, showing emotion. Cool, great. But, like, I don't understand why it's making you angry at someone else's anger. What?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's more tension and discomfort. It's like people aren't getting angry. They just don't want to hear about it, One time somebody shouted out, "Oh, boy, we're getting political." And I thought, okay, is child abuse a political issue? I thought that was pretty like bipartisan. We can all agree this shouldn't be done, right?
It's like, if you're on the other side of this topic, like, I think something's wrong with you, sir. I don't know, man.
Right. It's not a political issue, anyways. It's a social issue.
Protect children. Like, it should just be easy. Come on now.
Right.
Makes me laugh though. And one thing that I thought was truly beautiful is not just the way that like you weave these topics, like I said, inside of like very soothing sounds, but also with this double single is sort of like came a lyric video that sort of touched on the album artwork as well. So what sort of inspired the album artwork, and B, how hard is it to light a chunk of glass or ice on fire?
It took a lot of chemicals, I think. So I worked with a friend of mine, Josiah Billigot, and had him on as my art director for all of the artwork. And so we met a bunch of times and did some workshops where I was telling him all of the different themes of the album and explaining the inspiration really directly and specifically behind each song. And he had all of these questions prepared. Like, for example, if your album was a superhero, what would it be, and what would the anti-hero be? Or what result do I want to see? And I said, I would love it if, because I put this album out, we stopped observing daylight savings in Canada. Because there's a song called Daylight Savings that's about how much I don't like daylight savings, among other things. But so that he took all of that away and then came back with a few different concepts of what we could do. And together we decided that the best concept that most fully represented all the themes of the album and me as an artist was to take this floral arrangement and then freeze it in a block of ice and then set it on fire. and the reason for that was, anger can often be thought of in a negative way and perceived as destructive. And so instead here we were portraying something that is, living and alive, beautiful, like the flowers that are trapped in ice. And it's the application of fire that is revealing like what's really there and kind of liberating the thing that's inside. So it's a positive, it's kind of looking at something that could be a destructive force and using it as a positive thing. So, and then in the lyric video, we took a slow motion video of the block of ice on fire. And it's just some slow moving shots of that for the lyric video. And so Josiah kind of assembled a team together for that photo shoot, a prop stylist and a photographer and another assistant photographer. And they used, what did they use? Like lighter fluid and like chunks of fire starter, different types of fire starter and gels that light on fire, just all these various different things on the ice itself and in front of it and behind it to shoot that photograph. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot goes into it, but a very powerful image, I must say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And of course, earlier we touched on people's reception to some of the tracks. What has the reception been like to the album so far, now that it's been out for over 2 months now?
Right. I mean, so far it is positive. I think I'll have a better sense once I get back on the road. It was just a bit of a strange time to put an album out when, I didn't plan any tour dates to coincide with the album launch just because we were in lockdown in Toronto. Yeah. So the online response has been positive, but the thing I'm really looking forward to is playing these songs in a room with live humans and feeling how it lands. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, seeing that immediate response, right?
Right. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. So I did play one show in December before the album came out. And it's the first time I ever performed Calm Fury, the title track, live. And that's been interesting to kind of share that story of people being uncomfortable with Wretching in the Wings. And just even over the course of the last 3 years since I wrote that song, how I think it has started to land differently. And of course, we just have been through so much in the last 3 years that I don't know. I think maybe we're getting more used to people being angry and expressing anger over the last 3 years. It doesn't seem as uncommon, and it's not that it was ever uncommon, but I don't know. It's very prevalent, right, in the last little while. Yeah.
Everyone kind of understands it. Frustration's boiled over for a lot of people. So they're like, you know what? I get it. Okay. All right.
At first, when the pandemic started, everybody was just, we got to pull together. We're all in this together in the whole world. And I said to a friend of mine, oh, shoot, I think I missed my moment with the anger. it's just all of these other things that were going on. It's just, it doesn't matter now because we all are just having to really like be together and unified, and nobody wants to think about this anymore. And then obviously so many things tanked after that. And suddenly it's, well, yeah, what she said to me was that, no, I think it's still an important topic. And she even sent me a little card in the mail that to be like, don't worry, this album is still going to be important.
People will still be angry at something, yes. I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The moment's not past, that's for sure.
Hey, and sometimes we have to feel anger just so that we can appreciate joy at the same time.
Right. Yes, exactly. They sort of contrast each other. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I love it. And I've had a fantastic time diving behind this album. Of course, I would love to know, we've dove behind the process of crafting, creating, researching for this album. So what I would love to know is, how has this time and this process helped you specifically to grow as a person, or what has it taught you about yourself?
I mean, it's taught me that I'm more detail oriented than I thought. You know, I didn't like, I'm a musician. I went to school for jazz voice briefly, but I didn't finish that. And I've kind of focused on live performance more. So I don't have a formal education. I've never done an academic research project before. And it just was this rabbit hole that I fell into. And so I learned about myself that I really enjoy picking apart a subject and making lots of spreadsheets about it. And so I learned that. And what was the other question you asked me?
How did it help you to grow as a person?
Oh, yeah, I think I don't really deny my anger anymore. You know, I try to pay attention when it's showing up and acknowledge it, at least to myself, even if I'm not super great at telling other people in the moment when I'm angry. So that's definitely an ongoing growth process for me that I hope I'll continue down that road. So I've moved beyond the repressing part, and what I would like to get better at now is kind of moving my anger into positive action. That's hard. It's a hard thing. Yeah, like there are, people attend protests and things like that, and sometimes I've gone to a few of those things about causes that are really important to me, but it doesn't really quite feel like it's important, and I'll still show up and be another body if I feel like I need to do that, but it doesn't really feel. It takes a lot because it's a lot of. I don't like to be around so many people, and I'm generally a quiet person, and it just feels really, it's like sensory overwhelm, But I still haven't. I want to find ways to move that energy that comes up when you're really angry about something that you care about. Not just like an ego thing, like not just my, if I'm angry, like somebody's offended me, but things that surrounding justice, I need to find ways to channel that energy into action. So I'm contributing towards forward movement, on things that are important. And I'm not always great at that yet. So that's another thing I'm learning about. But the project I never understood it. People always used to say, maybe they still do say, you just have to channel that energy, channel your anger into something. And it was just a concept that seemed impossible to me before this project, right? When I was repressing it all the time, it was like, whenever I let this up, it gets really out of hand. So I don't know how I can like let it out without it just being like volcanic lava that destroys everything in my life. There was just no middle ground. So I feel like I've at least I can let it come to the surface now without being super destructive. And I'm learning how to point it towards something that matters to me.
Hey, it's definitely a process that takes time day by day. And like you said, you got to protect your energy at that exact
Right.
same time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Mhm.
Hey, well, I'm glad that you have learned quite a bit, it sounds like, from the process of crafting this new album, Calm
Mhm.
Fury. It is out right now. Listeners, you can go ahead and find it on your favorite music streaming service. Go out, support Sarah Hiltz. Also follow her on social media as well because, she might be hitting the road in the future. You never know.
Yes, this fall, I might be driving right through Kamloops potentially.
Oh, my goodness.
Ah,
Oh, okay. Well, I've got to make sure I'm in town.
yeah.
I have to make sure I'm up to date on that. I'm going to be hitting that follow button as soon as I'm done this interview, as the listeners should be doing too, so they can stay up to date. Sarah, I have had a fantastic time diving behind this new album, Calm Fury. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Colton.